Hey, yes, I know I don't look good today. You don't need to tell me or anything. I'm in my pajamas. I was sick today, so I just don't look good. But that's okay, right? I'm here for you, and we're gonna have some fun. All right, our I can statement for writing today. I didn't write it down, but I know what it is. It's I can write a letter and address it. Address means that you can fill out the envelope, okay? So, I just thought this would be kind of fun with quarantine and people don't usually get letters anymore in the mail, and I think it'd be pretty fun for your friend to get a letter, or maybe your cousin, or another family member that you just want to write a letter to. And getting mail that isn't like bills is super fun. And so I thought that would be fun. So let's do it. And I know in that last part I said it'll be fun, or this is going to be fun, and I said fun a lot. Sorry about that. Okay. So first things first, when we write a letter, you have to do a greeting. So that's when you say, "Dear so-and-so," or "Hello." It's how you greet your person, right? And this is going to be how we write just a friend letter. This isn't formal, so this is not how you would address the president or anything like that, okay? This is just for a friend, a family member, someone you're close to, all right? Do not write this type of letter if you're wanting to talk to someone important, okay? That would be like the principal of the school, the president of the United States, anything like that. We don't want to write how we're going to write today. So, the one that I like to usually do is just dear. I just like to say dear. So, when you write your letters, the dear goes up at the top the top left of your page. If you have lines, then it goes on the first line. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. There we go. You also sometimes really like to date your letters, so that'll go on the very top of the other side. If it's a lined piece of paper, then it goes in the top right corner, like we do at school. So today is 4/27/2020. Now my person knows when I wrote this letter, and they'll be able to see that. Okay, dear, and I'm going to write a letter just to Andrew, Sure. Dear Andrew. Oh, and my bad, you don't put the comma after dear, you put it after the person's name. Okay, so that's my greeting, and this is kind of fun. I actually wrote a lot of letters to Andrew in college because he was gone in Philadelphia for 2 years, so we just had to write letters, and so this will be like old times. Let's keep going. So now that the greeting is done, the next thing to do is the body of the paragraph. The body of the paragraph just means, what are you talking about, right? And so in the body of a paragraph that you're writing to a friend or someone you love, a family member, you just want to talk about what's going on in your life. You want to tell them what's happening. You want to ask them questions. How are they doing? You want to just tell them the important things that you want them to know, right? It doesn't have to be super formal, right? Just act like you're talking to them. Tell them what happened today. Tell them what's happened during quarantine. Ask them questions. How are they doing? What have they been doing during quarantine? It's kind of just like having a conversation. So that's what the body is in a letter. So a lot of the times I kind of like to start out with a question or something that I'm just thinking. And so I started, "Isn't quarantine boring?" And I put an exclamation point because I think it's so boring. And then I said, "I miss my students and school." So now I'm done with my first thing I want to talk about. The next thing I like to do is so you got done with like the complaining or the thing you really wanted to talk about. The next thing that you want to do in a letter is just tell them what's going on with you. Tell them something fun, right? You don't want the whole thing to just be complaining about quarantine, okay? So let's write the next thing, and it'll be something fun that you like to do or that you want to do when quarantine is over, something like that, okay? So the next thing I say is, "It has been fun hanging out with you and Quinn, though." So I'm making it more positive. I'm telling, there are some good things, right? Absolutely. The last thing we want to do in a letter, after you've talked about everything you want to say to them, I always like to ask a question because someone isn't going to write you a letter back if they don't have anything to say. So let's ask a question so that they can write you back. Alrighty? So my question I ask is, how is your quarantine going? Now Andrew will write me back because he has something to say, and we can continue writing letters back and forth. The last thing in writing a letter is your farewell, right? There's lots of things you can say for farewell. You can say love, that's totally fine. Love, comma. You always do a comma after your farewell. Love, comma. You can do sincerely. That's more of a formal one. So if you are writing a serious letter, you might want to say sincerely. But you could say that if you'd like. That's more for people, though, that aren't really your friends, right? It's just, I'm going to be formal and professional, sincerely. You can also say from. So just the typical from me. Make sure you have a comma after all of those. Or you can make it your own. Something that I've always done with my letters when I write to people I love or my friends or Andrew, I always do a little heart with a line. So that's kind of saying love me, and I'll put my name. So love Adriana. That's what I do. You can make it your own. People do all sorts of things. So that's what I kind of like to do when I'm doing my friends or a family member that I love. Or you could just do one of these. Love you, sincerely you, from you. Those are all really fun closures. So let's write that on my letter and then I'll be done. Okay, so I put my farewell at the bottom. I didn't have room, but usually if you're writing on lined pieces of paper, you would like to skip a couple lines maybe and put love and your name. Okay, so that's how we write a letter. Let's read the whole letter and then let's talk about how we address the envelope. Here's my letter. Dear Andrew, isn't quarantine boring? I miss my students and school. It has been fun hanging out with you and Quinn though. How is your quarantine going? Love, Adriana. That's my letter. It tells him what I want to say. It also asks him a question so he has something to write me back. Your letters also don't have to be this short. If you have a lot to tell somebody, tell them all the things you want to tell them. This is a great time to just get all your thoughts out on paper and just send them off. Send them to a friend. Tell them what you want to tell them. Ask them a question. Keep writing back and forth. It's super fun, right? Super important also though in letters, make sure you remember your capital letters at the beginning of sentences. Make sure you remember your punctuation, exclamation points, periods, question marks if you have them, right? You need to make sure you're remembering those important writing aspects, okay? Let's get to addressing the envelope. Okay, so pretend this whiteboard is an envelope. The front of your envelope in the top right corner has this little spot for a stamp, right? So pretend this is my stamp, because all letters have to have a stamp. That's where it goes. Over here on the top left corner, you're going to write your address. That tells the recipient of the letter, the person who gets your letter, where they're going to send their response. That's where you put your address. So I'm going to show you what that will look like. Okay, so when you address the top left corner of your letter, the first line is your name. So since I'm writing this letter to Andrew, I put my name, Adriana Cummins. The second line is your street address, your house number, and the street you live on. So this is my old house in California. So it's nowhere you guys would know, but it's where I used to live when I was little. So I have my house number, which is 9445. The street that I lived on was Bardew Lane. So that's what I wrote, house number and street that I live on. The third line of that, of your address is the city that you live in and the state plus the zip code. So this house was in Sacramento, that's the city. Comma, you always separate cities and states with a comma. It was in California. California is abbreviated capital C, capital A. You guys are in Utah, so you are going to put capital U, capital T. Okay, that is the Utah abbreviation. After you've written the city and state, you write the zip code. If you don't know your zip code, your parents can help you with that. If you don't know your address, your street number, and your house number, your parents can help you with that, okay? The zip code for this house was 95829. So that's what I wrote. Okay, the next step of addressing your letter is adding the recipient's, the person you're sending it to, their address. That goes in the middle, the front middle of the envelope. So let's do that. So, since I'm writing this letter to Andrew, I put his first name at the top on the first line of his address. That just tells the mail person, who is this going to? So you want to make sure you have their name. The next thing you put is the house number and the street that they live on. This house number was my first house that I lived in when I was a little girl. So 10070, that was the house number, and it was on Cristo Drive. That was the street. And then, just to show you what a Utah address would look like, I changed it to Utah, even though this was in California. So the third line is the city, state, and zip code. So Riverton, Utah, zip code 84065. So this isn't a real address, but that's what one looks like, okay? Now, if you don't know your friend's address, you can email them. I have shown you how to email everybody in the class. If your friend is not in the class, hopefully you have your number and you can call them, or your mom can call them and get their address so that you can send them a letter. If you don't know your address and someone wants it, make sure that it's someone that is okay to have your address. Someone you know, someone you trust, someone your parents know and trust. You do not want to give your address out to just anybody, okay? Make sure you ask your parents if it's okay to share your address. Make sure you ask your parents if it's okay to send a letter to someone else. It has to be okay. Stay safe when you are writing letters, okay? All right, that's writing letters. I hope you guys have fun. I hope you write some letters to your friends, to your family. Let them know you love them, you miss them. Yeah, that's it. All right, have a good day, guys.